Hello and welcome back to the Swipe Savvy podcast. Today, in this fourth episode, we're going to be talking about exploring Canadian credit card rewards. So, what that means is credit card reward programs and essentially everything that's involved with those. So, we're going to talk about what they are, how to earn these points, how to use these points, and basically anything else you can think of related to this topic. As always, I'm joined by co-founder of CreditVerse and my co-host Alian. And Alian, why don't you get us started by talking about what exactly these reward programs are?
Right. So I think credit card rewards are just a very, very broad term. I think if you want to put it in like a one sentence explanation, which is something I've been trying to do recently with everything I'm trying to describe with credit cards, it's just the amount of stuff or the amount of value you get back from holding a credit card by a lot of the spend you do on the card, or for perhaps even like the welcome bonus. So this could be in the form of, travel rewards, so like points or rewards you can spend on other things like with hotels or other, ways you can earn points like Hudson's Bay rewards, even perhaps just any kind of loyalty points you earn, as well as also cash back. Now, some people don't really think cashback is a real credit card reward. They think it's just like it's a whole other thing. But, I'd have to kind of disagree there. Of course, we're not going to talk that much about cashback in this podcast because I think it's relatively straightforward. You just earn cash back for the stuff you spend. Or we're going to kind of talk about what the major reward currencies are in Canada, and then how you can maximize and how you can really use them, and what you can do with a lot of these points.
Yeah, for sure. So mentioned it briefly, but there is different kinds of forms of rewards. There's your typical cashback, which is essentially just receiving a percent back on your purchases in the form of cash that you can oftentimes just use to pay off your bill. Sometimes I think you can use it for other things, but most of the time it's just to pay off your bill. So that's one category. That's the easiest and most simple category, and that's probably all we're going to talk about related to cashback in this podcast. And then we have other things. So we got the most famous one would be travel rewards, kind of earning different point currencies to use towards booking flights or hotels. And then you have a kind of an other category where you can use points to redeem for other things like, I don't know, gift cards, some other forms of merchandise. Am I missing anything here?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it there. Yeah, I think the other category is one that we're seeing growing a little bit here, but I think with Crediverse, most of our time is kind of spent on that travel reward side because we both really like to travel. I think we have a podcast come out later in the next couple of weeks where we're talking about how we've used all of our credit card rewards. So be sure to also stay around for that. But yeah, we do like to travel a lot, so we do focus more on the travel reward side. But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can use your points. And, we're going to talk about different types of points currencies, whether flexible or inflexible, all that jazz. So, just be sure to stick around.
So I think the majority of this podcast is going to be diving into specific credit card reward programs. So we're going to ignore the cashback. We're going to, for the most part, ignore those other kind of points redemption options where you can earn for, random stuff. We're going to focus on travel rewards. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to structure it in terms of going through a few different reward programs available in Canada, kind of breaking them down individually. So let's start with the one that we talk about the most and probably the one that we use the most, which is American Express membership rewards. So to break it down simply, they are rewards points that you earn by using your American Express credit cards. It's pretty simple in that sense. There's different ways you can earn them, redeem them, etc. So I'll hand it over to Alian to kind of talk through that a bit.
Yeah, of course. I think, we see American Express coming from the US market and just, in my opinion at least, just hit it out of the park. They have probably the strongest points currency in Canada of any of the, big banks we have, any of the financial institutions we have in general. And there's a lot of ways you can really redeem your rewards. We've made several YouTube videos about, the strength of American Express MR points, but it starts as simple as just using it as cash back. And unlike other points currencies, you can use that cash back at like 1 cent per point. So basically at 1%. So any earn rate you have is just effectively just cash back, even the base earn rate, which I think is stronger than we see on pretty much every cashback card out there, or just about the same as we see on every cashback card out there, which is something that, you should really consider. Outside of that, of course, if you really need the money and you don't really see yourself traveling with your MR, it might make sense to redeem it as cash back. Sometimes they have bonuses that are like 30% bonus. So you'll redeem at 1.3 cents per point. So if you have 100,000 points saved up, basically you'll get $1,300 of cash back instead of like 1,000. So pretty solid upside there. But we would probably wait till you see one of those like bonuses before redeeming your MRS cashback, unless you just really need the money right away. Moving into some of the more travel rewards, skipping over things like gift cards because those generally tend to be about the same value as cashback, and cash is king. I think we go to business school, so we learn about the all the lovely things cash does, but I think it's just much more flexible than anything else. Especially like if you think about it this way, would I rather have a like $100 gift card to McDonald's or $100 of cash back I can spend anywhere I want? Definitely would go with $100 of cash back because I can go buy like two SD cards or like anything else. I talk about cameras a lot because I like them, but cashback has a lot of flexibility. Gift cards, you do lack that flexibility. Also, going on to other things, you do lack even more flexibility when you go into travel. Luckily, though, American Express has like a pretty flexible points currency where you can transfer out to just more than their own, like I guess, airlines. So you can, for Canadian MR at least, you can transfer over to Aeroplan, British Airways Avios, Cathay Pacific Asia Miles, Air France KLM, Etihad. You can also transfer to some hotel programs like Marriott and Hilton. And if you really can't find anything from any of these transfer partners, which is quite unlikely, I think, these partners pretty much take every single airline, like pretty much have every single airline in the entire world within them in some form, as they cover all like the major like airline alliances. You can also just redeem them within like the Amex travel portal themselves. Get 1.5, 2 cents per point perhaps, which isn't terrible value. Like if you're getting 2 cents per point on an economy class redemption, and that's how you want to spend your points, that's a really really good way to go. Of course, as you restrict yourself a little bit more, like as you say, I'm going to go into Aeroplan, I'm going to redeem for business class flights only. You do suffer from that same lock-in effect you would suffer from like a gift card where like now you have a bunch of MR that are Aeroplan points, so you can only redeem them for flights on Air Canada or their partners. So you want to book Qatar Airways Q Suites or you want to book, Air France KLM because they fly from a lot of Canadian destinations. You're kind of stuck in that sense. So, we would recommend leaving your points as MR as long as you possibly can before really transferring them out. But MR, definitely the strongest currency, definitely the easiest to earn. Unfortunately, it is an Amex, so even though we are seeing acceptance get higher and higher every single year, I'm sure we can both speak to like the, I guess, under 10 or 15 places we know that don't take Amex. Pretty much everywhere else takes it. Highest earn rates generally on their cards. We talk about the Cobalt all the time. 5x on dining and grocery and food delivery. And that's 10% back at 2 cents per point, right? Nothing's getting anywhere close to that. No cashback cards getting close to that. And certainly no other travel rewards card, at least in the Canadian market right now, is getting close to that.
Yeah, so you said a lot there. I'm gonna take a step back and kind of go back to the basics. So if I can share my screen, uh, basically what I want to do is walk through what the process looks like from start to finish when we talk about earning points. So I've pulled up the Amex Cobalt here, just because that's the card that we talk about the most. That's my daily driver. Basically, how it works is you go to a store, you pull out your Cobalt, and you buy something. So let's say I'm at Harvey's and I want to buy some food. Well, I'm going to earn 5 times points. So what that means is for every dollar that I spend at Harvey's, let's say it's $10, I earn 5 times that amount in points. So I earn 50 points. So that's kind of step one. That's where it all kind of begins. So now that you've earned these points, you have a whole host of options, which is essentially what Elian just broke down. You can use it for merchandise, gift cards, cashback in different ways, and of course, travel. Now, Elian broke down the travel options for American Express membership rewards points, which is what you earn by using the Cobalt. But as we know, there's a whole bunch of other options and ways to earn and redeem these points. So why don't we dive into another popular reward program in Canada? And can you go a little bit into the specifics on what those travel partners look like? I know you talked about American Express has Aeroplan as an example, and then basically have access to pretty much any airline you want to fly with. But why don't we talk about RBC Avion Rewards, which I know is another popular one, probably second up to Amex in Canada at least. So why don't you talk about the specific reward or redemption options?
Sure. So as we talked about, RBC Avion, super strong program, probably second best to American Express membership rewards. I think when I'm waiting in line and I see the person out in front of me take out a card, not 9 times out of 10, but many times out of 10, it ends up being an RBC Avion card. If it's a rewards card, it's probably an Avion card at this point, or a PC Optimum card, but that's a different story. RBC definitely is catching up in terms of finding a lot of these partners. They have British Airways Avios, which we find really really strong. The Avios program is getting stronger and stronger every single year. They have Iberia on there now. They have Finnair on there now. So you can transfer points freely between all of these. They of course have Qatar Airways, so if you want to book Qatar Airways Q suites, can definitely do that as well. Outside of that, I think RBC definitely has a focus towards One World, um, and that's pretty much just RBC Avion, as well as American Airlines Advantage and Cathay Pacific Asia Miles. These are all One World carriers, so that's kind of where you see a bit of the downside of having a program like RBC Avion, where you're really trapped in one alliance. I know the other option is redeeming your points for WestJet dollars, but honestly, that's not really super worth it considering you only get 1 cent per point, which is just what you'd be getting on a cashback card, anyways. So yeah, I think RBC definitely focused towards One World. We saw that takeover of HSBC, where HSBC were the only bank in Canada to have Singapore Airlines KrisFlyer as a partner. We haven't seen that integration yet. Will we see that integration? We don't really know. My hope is yes. I think both of our brains kind of say no on that, unfortunately. But I think that'd be really, really cool. And it would show them, going outside the network. And I'm excited to see what RBC does next. Of course, One World is definitely a strong program. But within Canada, it's, it's probably the weakest somehow. There's not really any carriers you can take within Canada to really maximize your rewards here. What you can do instead with your RBC Avion points is use the flexible or fixed points grid. This is where you can get good value. You get about 2 cents per point on a good day using the fixed points grid, especially like cross country travel within Canada. Tends to be pretty expensive compared to the US, or even travel to places in the US. Again, from Canada, tends to be much, much more expensive than other places. So what you can really just do is, 17,500 points one way gets you from coast to coast, plus some, a couple taxes and fees. Within provinces or, to adjacent provinces, it's 7,500 points one way. So you're getting about 2 cents per point a lot of the time here. And I think that's probably the way to go if you just have a lot of points and you don't really want to transfer them out and you want to fly within North America. That's how I would kind of go down RBC.
One other thing I want to talk about that I didn't talk about with Amex, and I guess it'll be a good segue into the next program that I want to talk about, is who exactly are these programs for? Now, this is super important because when deciding which credit card to get, that's essentially going to decide which rewards currency you're going to start to earn and what you can actually use with those rewards. So let's start with Amex. Just briefly, who give me kind of like the perfect demographic for collecting MR.
To be honest, I don't even think it's just with MR. I think it's with any points currency other than, maybe something like PC Optimum. The only people who should really be focusing their collection towards points currency as opposed to cashback are people who do end up using it for travel, because that's where you do get some excise value. Outside of that, like 9 times out of 10, just having a cashback card is going to bring you better value because you can do whatever you want with it. There's no point to just not have any real aspiration to travel, but use a points card all the time. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have a ton of points sitting there, which you're not really going to use, and they're going to get devalued over time. Whereas, with cashback, you just get the cash back. You can spend it in any way you really want and, just kind of go from there. So I would say MR, definitely for those who travel because, they have a lot of travel partners, both airlines and hotels. If I were someone who's traveling, I would definitely take a look at picking up one of those cards instead of using a cashback card if you do find yourself, able to get some good value out of it.
So you'd say the same thing for Avion rewards then?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely say the same thing for Avion rewards. Um, I think it's really meant for those who travel. I think, unfortunately, we do come across a lot of people who reach out to us and say, I have a lot of these points sitting around. I just don't know how to use them. I collected points all the time because, banks want to push points currencies more than they want to push cashback because at the end of the day, they know that those points, yeah, if you maximize the value out of them, if you know how to use them properly, will get you much better than cashback. But for most people, like people can have 6 or 700,000 points just sitting around over many years of spending on their credit card, not really traveling anywhere with it because they just don't really know how to use it. And there's definitely a line that banks run where they're like, I don't think people know how to really use this, which means they're just going to hold this and it's going to get devalued over time. Versus, 6 or 700,000 points is, $6,000 or $7,000 of cash back. And that's a lot of money that can go towards, a lot of other things. It can go towards investing in the future. It can go towards any expenses you have coming up. Things are getting more expensive. It's always nice to get a little bit more cash back and get that flexibility with it.
Yeah, for sure. So the reason I brought that up is, as I think you touched on a couple times now, the next program I want to talk about is actually PC Optimum and through their kind of PC Financial credit card. So that's kind of a whole another contrasting rewards program. You don't really use it for travel. You can't use it for travel, correct?
Not really. Like you definitely, yeah. The main point is just you'd be able to get groceries back or car washes or whatever the case may be with it back.
So I think a lot of people, a lot of like average citizens would find that much more valuable than collecting MR because, they're not traveling that often. Groceries is something that they need. Everybody, or most people, need groceries. So why don't you dive into that program a little bit, kind of the start to finish, and then maybe touch on the redemption options.
Sure. So PC Optimum is just from PC Financial, which is owned by like the Western Corporation. They operate like Loblaws and Superstore and No Frills, all the pretty much like the cornerstone of the major grocery stores in Canada. Um, they have their own points currency where you earn on places like Shoppers Drug Mart as well as all those grocery stores. It's honestly one of the more easy things you can really think about in terms of redeeming points and earning them. You just earn a set number of points for every dollar you spend at like a grocery store, and then it's always an elevated earn rate at Shoppers to kind of push you more towards paying a little bit more for certain items. Um, Honestly, I don't think the earn rates are really that great on it. There's no card in there where I go, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. I would probably rather pick up another cashback card because effectively at the end of the day, this is cashback. Groceries are something that's effectively a necessity. And unless you're going to be getting a car wash every single day or like, many times in a month, you're going to get that 1 cent per point earn rate. And if you can get 4% back using a cashback card at a grocery store, you're much better off than getting one of these PC Optimum cards that give you, 2% back or 1% back. Because every 10 points is worth 1 cent. So it's zero point 0.1 cents per point, if that makes sense. So yeah, you might see really big numbers, but every 10,000 points is redeemable for $10. $1? Brain? What's going on? 10,000 points is redeemable for $10. Yes, that's correct. So a bit weaker in terms of earn rate, I think we see compared to some of the other currencies. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, you I think people fall into it because they see they're going to get a lot of points back in terms of like huge numbers. Like you can get 20 or 30 points per dollar spent, but you just have to kind of do the math and see how much is a point really worth. And if your point is coming out to be less than, 1 cent per point we use as this benchmark for cashback, I'd probably stick with just getting a cashback card. Now that being said, if you do get some of their other cards, like there's a new one that's like kind of on the higher end that has an annual fee attached. If you do use like the PC grocery delivery, a PC Express, I believe it's called, you get a full rebate on that. So if you can find value there, if you shop a lot at somewhere like Shoppers Drug Mart, yeah, it definitely makes sense to hold on to a card like that. But for other people, like I would probably just stick to a cashback card just because, you kind of fall into this equation where you see a bunch of these points sitting in your account and you go, wow, I have like 500,000 PC Optimum points. That's $500 of groceries if you really think about it. But, most times people are going to end up spending those things on like getting a Nintendo Switch or like something else as opposed to redeeming for groceries every single time. Whereas with cashback, I think it just gets put in as cashback to your own account. So people are less like inclined to use it for something they may not really need. I think this goes into a whole other like conversation we can have about, I shouldn't say our rewards currency is like evil, but definitely the fact that like you are falling into more consumerism perhaps if you do use rewards currencies and you're using it instead of something like cashback. Um, But yeah, I mean, to be honest, even I fall victim to it sometimes. Like I collect PC Optimum points from when I can't use my Amex, like at PC Optimum, like PC grocery stores, because if you're a student, you get 10% back. That 10% definitely adds up over a long period of time, but you get 10% back in points. Now I'm sitting on like a few 100,000 points, and I'm thinking, I think I'm gonna get like I don't know a Nintendo Switch with this, or like a controller for my Xbox, or perhaps like just something I may not necessarily need. Whereas if I was collecting cash back on those purchases instead, I'd just see it get redeemed to my account, and I'd go, okay, cool, I got $30 off this month on my bill. That's great. Like $30 back. We'll move on to the next month. So it really differs from person to person. But for me, I do find myself falling into that points equation a little bit more, specifically with something like PC Optimum.
Yeah, I think the point of this is when you're kind of picking up a new credit card or even your first credit card, understanding not just what's kind of being featured on display as redemption or reward opportunities, kind of really evaluating how you can redeem those points and assessing the value. Like as you mentioned, sometimes collecting points versus just getting cash back, like cash back is sometimes better. So one of the best ways to do this is to use a lot of these credit cards have calculators on kind of the card page on the website. We're starting to roll that out on our website at creditverse.ca. That's a good way to kind of measure how much real value you're going to get based on your own personal spend, and then whether it's better to redeem that as cash back or to get some points off your or to some discounts on your groceries or to redeem for travel if that's what suits you. So basically making sure to understand that before picking up a credit card is pretty important. And I think the last kind of thing that we want to discuss on this podcast is another sort of reward program, sometimes tied to credit cards, sometimes not. And that's the main one that I can think of is Aeroplan, Air Canada's Aeroplan. So that's something that you can earn through co-branded credit cards, but it's also something you can earn through other different ways, or you can convert to Aeroplan. So why don't you briefly discuss the ins and outs of this program?
Of course, Aeroplan is also maybe statistically the most popular points currency in Canada. Um, of course, sometimes it's tied to credit cards, sometimes it's not, as you just mentioned. You can earn Aeroplan points either by flying, so by putting your Aeroplan number when you book a flight with Air Canada or some of their partners. And if you pick an eligible fare that earns points, so maybe not like an economy basic fare, you'll earn some points that way. The other way to also earn it, which I think we probably do more than we pay for flights, is by having a co-branded credit card. So if you have like an Aeroplan Core card from American Express, or even TD or CIBC have their own variants of these cards. I think there's like 12 of them, no, 9 of them in total. Um, they all have their own benefits and perks, and they're all pretty good, I would say. Or there's 8 of them actually. Whatever. There's a handful of these cards. You can use them to earn a lot of points, and then you can redeem them for flights with Air Canada or their partners. Aeroplan as a program has gotten a lot stronger in the past couple of years. They've added things like redemption with Singapore Airlines as well as Emirates and business and first class, which I think is pretty neat. There's no Singapore Airlines first class, unfortunately, just yet. But yeah, I think the program is getting stronger and stronger, and it's probably the program I'm the most bullish on, just because we are seeing them pick up a lot of things, and I think they have the most, probably the most play with any other compared to any other points currency in Canada, right? Like WestJet doesn't really have the strongest internal rewards currency. Like WestJet rewards isn't spectacular for when you're booking something like KLM or other SkyTeam partners. So I can really see Aeroplan taking the fight to even the strongest programs. I would make the argument that Aeroplan is perhaps the strongest points currency in the entire world in terms of really redemptions. We do see a lot of people from the US even take advantage of it, because it has no fuel surcharges, which are pretty much just levied by a lot of other programs, which are included in the taxes and fees as for other programs. But Air Canada is really light on these compared to something like British Airways Avios, where if you're flying to the UK in a premium cabin, you just have to pay like $1,000 of taxes and fees, which really cuts into a lot of the redemption value you're going to get. So yeah, Aeroplan, really, really strong. You can use it for flights within Canada, flights to the US, flights to pretty much anywhere in the entire world. We're also making a calculator where you can kind of see how many points it's going to take to get from any 2 places in the world with Aeroplan points. So again, be sure to just go to creditverse.ca for that. It's going to take a few weeks for that to really roll out, but when that's up there, I think it's something that you guys can see how much you can really get value out of. Because as Ilya said, like it doesn't really matter if you're getting a ton of these points and you're just picking up what's on that like display shelf saying, oh yeah, get this card. Even at places like airports, you see people standing and saying, hey, like you should get the CIBC Aeroplan card. Sure, like solid card, but really make sure it's right for you. And I think we're trying to roll out some tools that'll hopefully help everyone figure out if something like that may be right for them. Now, before I think we go over to the next thing, Ilias, you did mention that you have to make sure it's right for you, and I think you and I have had some pretty different experiences on how we've chosen some of our points or like some of the ways we've gone about this entire credit card like strategy. Do you want to kind of give your insight as to how you chose what was right for you and what are the considerations you had?
Yeah. I mean, mine is very, very simple compared to yours. I just went on the CreditVerse YouTube channel and saw the most OP card in Canada and got that one. No, but in reality, based on essentially what you told me, Alion, the Amex Cobalt is what I use every day for pretty much all my purchases, unless the place doesn't accept Amex, in which case I just use my TD cashback card, which I've probably raked up couple $100 in cash back over what 4 years now, so nothing too special there. But the Cobalt has given me a lot of opportunities to kind of travel essentially whenever I want, wherever I want, which has been really nice. But when I picked that card up, it was uh, based on the information that I earned 5 times points on kind of food and groceries. That was a big thing because that's my biggest category. For a lot of people, groceries is the biggest category of spend. So being able to earn 5 times points on that was a huge way to draw me in. So that was kind of the first bit. And then the second bit was actually redeeming and using the points. So what I liked was the flexibility. I could use the points to kind of cover some things on my statement if I really wanted to. It's not something I do often. I don't think I've ever done it actually at all. But travel was something that was something that I wanted to explore and hadn't explored. So I saw this as a really good way to kind of start getting into that, and it's certainly been successful so far. What I essentially do, my entire strategy is collecting the points and converting them to Aeroplan, and then when I decide that I want to fly somewhere, I just book a flight with points. So it's really definitely not an efficient way of going about it, but it's something that works for me, and I think that's something that I want to highlight here is that as long as it works for you, you don't have to be maximizing, every single purchase that you make, every single point that you earn. It's about what works for you, and simplifying it to the level that makes sense for you. So before we dive into or I guess as we dive into this last and final section, strategies for kind of maximizing these credit card rewards. It's something that we're not going to go too deep into. I just want to kind of give a brief overview on the topic, and maybe if there's some interest, we can do another full episode on that because that's a pretty complex topic. Um, but the question I really want to ask based on this section is it actually worth it to go super deep and say, okay, I'm going to get this card, this card, this card, and this card. I'm going to use card A for groceries. I'm going to use card B for gas. I'm going to use card C for all my travel. Um, is that worth it? Like, when does that become worth it, or does it even become worth it at all?
So I think the concept of worth is a really interesting thing because we're pretty young. We have probably more free time than most other people do. As you get older and you get more responsibilities, we also have a little more flexibility in our lives. So we're able to kind of say, it's fine. I can leave on a 10:40 p.m. on this flight to make it over. It's fine. We'll make it work somehow. I think I find it really worth it to really min max and get absolutely maximum value out of every single point. Of course, like if I know I have to fly somewhere and I have some points sitting around, I'll use them because I don't think it makes sense to just use actual money when you have just some points sitting around, unless the redemption value is like absolutely atrocious. But yeah, I think it can make sense. Maybe for the average person, I would say, get your feet wet with it, right? Get a card that is going to earn some kind of points currency. Get a no annual fee card. Get like an Amex Green or perhaps an Aeroplan like Visa Platinum card, which has no annual fee. You'll just earn some points towards Aeroplan or other partners or other people you can fly with, and just start there. And if you're really enjoying it, you're finding yourself getting some good value out of it. That's where I would start to really jump in a little bit more and also see if you enjoy it, right? Like I have a lot of fun doing this. Like last night I was running Monte Carlo simulations on like the cross rate between two currencies to see if it made sense getting a different card that has, no foreign transaction fees and then transferring my Canadian dollars over to US dollars and avoiding a cross rate and whatnot. Again, I have a lot of fun with that. I like to see all these little numbers. I like to say, oh yeah, you can get this slight edge here, you can get that slight edge there. I want to experience a lot of these, premium business and first class products across the world. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. But if you're a bit older, you have a family, you don't really have that much flexibility, perhaps you don't have that much time. I don't think it really makes that much sense to dive in head first. I would say, get your toes wet. I don't think it takes that much effort to really like absolutely maximize. But I think a great place to start is just like if you have a cashback card right now, you want to travel a lot in the future, you have aspirations for travel at least, maybe get a points card, make sure it's like no annual fee, see how much you earn, see if you enjoy redeeming, because it's all a process, right? Like I'm not going to say that it's easy at all. Redeeming is probably the hardest part. So you have to make sure you can, find availability for your days and everything else. I have a lot of fun. I think you also have quite a bit of fun with it. So it's worth it for us. But if you're someone like my parents who, they like traveling, but it's probably really not worth their time to spend as many hours as I do, absolutely like maximizing how much they earn. Like they have like an Amex Platinum because they're like, oh, I want to travel, I want lounge access. Yeah, sure, I won't be able to get 5x on my eats and drinks, but that's okay for me. I'll get 2x or 3x or whatever the case may be. I'm happy with that. I'll get my insurance and I'll get lounge access. That's all they really care about, and that's kind of where they end it. And they spend a decent amount on the card. They're able to redeem for a few flights every year, and they're perfectly happy with that. But yeah, they're obviously much older than we are, so they have a lot of some more responsibilities than we do. So that's where I think the cutoff ends up being: start really simple, see if you like it, because it's kind of a hobby for both of us. If you don't like it, then that's totally fine. Like stick with your cashback card. Don't start out with an Amex Platinum. Don't start out with like this really high end card, because you're just going to find yourself like loathing the whole experience. And it takes some time. And of course, there are some days where I'm like, hitting my keyboard saying, wow, I wish there was a word space available on this route. Or like, oh, I thought this would work, but it isn't working this way. Or like, oh, the Aeroplan site's being really annoying. It happens. That's just kind of the entire process. I have some fun with it. Obviously, I've been able to experience some pretty incredible things that I perhaps wouldn't have been able to experience without, rewards currencies. So I find a lot of value in it, but again, differs for every single person.
Yep. At the end of the day, everything that we've talked about is all based on your own personal preference, your own willingness to kind of put in that work, and do you actually value the reward at the end of the day. So that's kind of where we'll leave it at for this episode. Let us know your thoughts. If you want to see any other topics being discussed, I kind of hinted at maybe doing the strategies for maximizing these rewards as its own episode. So if you're interested in that, do let us know. Yeah, other than that, we'll see you in the next episode.